patriots. We're in Washington, D.C., Capitol building dead in front of us.
This video is brought to you by Political X and Track Record. Track Record helped produce some of these excellent graphics. Check out his videos in the link below.
So tomorrow is going to be an amazing and spectacular day, when everyday American citizens get together and fight tyranny.
I don't even like to say it because I'll be arrested.
Well, let's not say it.
We need to go, I'll say it.
All right.
We need to go in to the Capitol.
Let's go!
The Capitol building, a building directly connected to the founding of the United States and held in high regard by both the right and left. Yet in 2021, 245 years after the founding of the United States, Congress would turn into mayhem, death, and destruction. It was the first time the Capitol had been violently seized since 1814, when it was taken by the British in the War of 1812. For the first time in United States history, a sitting president claimed the presidential election had been rigged. President Trump refused to accept the election loss and continued to tell many and all who would listen that the loss was due to fraud.
Major infractions or outright fraud.
This was strongly supported by Fox News, conspiracy theorists on the internet, and far-right groups such as QAnon, the Proud Boys, and the Oath Keepers, as well as Alex Jones.
There has been a massive and coordinated effort to steal this election.
That it is a corrupt, stolen election.
They rigged the election, and now, based on the rigged election, they're destroying our country.
These various acts of voter fraud.
And it's rigged.
Specifically focused on big cities.
We bleed freedom.
This will be their Waterloo. This will be their destruction.
However, this was strongly disputed in the courts, on television, and from members of the Republican Party. Even his Vice President, Mike Pence.
Trump said I had the right to overturn the election. But President Trump is wrong.
I'm Donald Trump, and I don't endorse this video. You should not subscribe or like Political X. Every time you like and subscribe, he damages my campaign.
The insurrection began weeks before, but on January 6th, the start gets kicked off with a tweet from Trump.
States want to correct their votes, which they now know were based on irregularities and fraud, plus corrupt process, never received legislative approval. All Mike Pence has to do is send them back to the states, and we win. Do it, Mike. This is a time for extreme courage.
10:35, there's no more space available to watch Trump's speech, and a group known as the Proud Boys begins to congregate at the Washington Monument. They then begin a 30-minute walk to Congress. At 10:50, Rudy Giuliani calls for trial by combat.
Let's have trial by combat!
This is followed by Eric Trump, who claims that the election was a steal.
They can lie, they can cheat, they can steal.
Whilst backstage, within a few months, it would become apparent that the organisers have been communicating directly with Eric Trump.
Hey brother, we're boots on the ground here. We're moving on to Capitol now. I'll give you a boots on the ground update here in a few.
11:30 a.m. The motorcade of Vice President-elect Kamala Harris arrives at the DNC headquarters.
All of us here today do not want to see our election victory stolen by emboldened radical left Democrats, which is what they're doing, and stolen by the fake news media. That's what they've done and what they're doing. We will never give up. We will never concede. It doesn't happen. You don't concede when there's theft involved. This egregious assault on our democracy, because you'll never take back our country with weakness. You have to show strength, and you have to be strong.
And finally ordering them to go and release that hate upon the US
Anyone
Capitol.
you want, but I think right here we're going to walk down on our to the Capitol. And after this, we're going to walk down, and I'll be there with you. We're going to walk down.
During that speech, he said the word slaughtered once, killed 3 times, dead 5, destroyed 6, and the word fight or fighting 20 times. Republican Paul Gosar tweets that Biden should concede and demands his concession by the next morning. 12:49, and a police sweep near the National Republican Club identifies a vehicle which held 1 handgun, an M4 carbine assault rifle with a loaded magazine, and components for 11 Molotov cocktails. Whilst all this has been going on, large groups of people, QAnon, Oath Keepers, and the Proud Boys have been moving towards Congress. This is a representation of all police protection that Congress had on January 6th. On the eastern side, there were a few dozen officers. And on the western side, towards Trump's rally, we have 2 front barricades protected by 5 officers, another half dozen on the lawn, and then another dozen at the second barricade. Not a lot to protect Congress. For weeks and days before January 6th, the police had been warned, both by the FBI, the CIA, as well as local law enforcement, that there was a great risk towards the Congress building, yet nothing was done to reinforce those police officers stationed at the Congressional building, both putting at danger the lives of the Congress people and senators, as well as those police officers who were trying to protect them. At 12:53, the first barriers are breached, which indicates that this was all coordinated, something the police had failed to recognize both before and at the time, and would be a clear indication that this was not just some anger being vented randomly. This was an organized insurrection on the United States Capitol. The British would once again be involved. Ryan Sansell of Bristol, England, was the first to step forward at breach point 1. What was about to unfold here was mass violence on an unprecedented scale against Congress. The police were unable to stop the crowd and pulled back to the main building. At point 2, people just climbed over the fencing, and at the same time, point 3 was overwhelmed. Chief of Police for Washington DC, Chief Sund, calls the House Sergeant of Arms, Paul D. Irving, and the Senate Sergeant of Arms, Michael Stranger. Both are in charge of security within Congress. He asked them to declare an emergency and call for deployment of the National Guard. Irving and Stranger state that they will forward the request up their chains of command. It's important to note that both Sergeants at Arms are in charge of security within the building and have over 900 members of staff available to them, yet very little seems to have been done. 1:07, law enforcement discover a pipe bomb only several yards from where Kamala Harris's motorcade had passed. At 1:10, Trump ends his speech by encouraging the crowd to march to the Capitol.
We're going to walk down, and I'll be there with you. We're going to walk down. We're going to walk down anyone you want, but I think right here we're going to walk down to the Capitol.
Now this is where it gets very interesting, because Donald Trump's going to finish that speech. He's not going to walk down to the Capitol. Instead, and I've calculated this using Google Maps, he's going to go to the White House. Within 6 to 10 minutes, he's going to be inside the dining room next to the Oval Office, watching all of this unfold.
Do you want your house back?
Multiple capital injury! Multiple capital injury! Stephen Trump, we are still taking metal, sharpened objects, missiles to include bottles and rocks, and hand-thrown chemical-grade fireworks.
By 1:30, the Capitol Police have been pushed back to the base of Congress. Problems are going to increase as the Oathbreakers do a flanking maneuver to get to the opposite side and encourage them to also get involved with the rioting. This is the mob pushing in from the west. The police are overwhelmed and are forced back up to the steps and then up to the doors themselves. The mob surge forward. At this stage, there are problems on both the west and eastern sides of the building.
If I give this up, they're going to have direct access. At least this Capitol we can defend. We gotta hold what we have.
In front of you are a set of stairs which have been covered in scaffolding for the Joe Biden inauguration, but they give direct access to the building, allowing access to multiple entrances, and only 3 small police lines protect it. The Proud Boys begin to see the weakness in the line.
These are real stairs. We're shadowed over here. Stairs are right there. That opens. Take the stairs! Take the
Fighting continues on the stairs, but only for a few more minutes, and eventually the police are overwhelmed and the crowd begins to push past them. This is a dire situation as it allows the crowd to have multiple entry points. It's now coming up to an hour since the president's speech. We've heard absolutely nothing, and we know that he's still in the dining room watching all of this unfold. The mob are at the north end of Congress. They are below the Senate and they're about to break in. Dominic Pezzola uses a riot shield to break a window to gain the first entry point into Congress. By the end of the day, it's estimated there were at least 8 entry points broken into to gain access to Congress.
Okay guys, apparently this tip of the spear has entered the Capitol building.
At 2:13, the Capitol building is breached. The officer is unsure as to what to do and proceeds to fall back. You can see that some of the rioters are carrying the Confederate flag, a symbol of slavery, as well as a baseball bat. The doors are kicked in, allowing people to come in larger numbers. The mob has made its way through the breach and are now heading north towards the Senate, although the Senate is in the floor above. Officer Eugene Goodman takes control of the situation and runs across the second floor, intercepting Senator Mitt Romney, a person who ran as vice president and has also stood up to Trump. He arrives down on the first floor and intercepts the rioters in an intense situation. Here you can see he's ready to pull his weapon. The skill Officer Goodman shows here is nothing short of spectacular. He tries to stop them going to the main entrance of the Senate and lures them up the stairs by pushing the lead rioter. He threatens, he cajoles, he looks to his left and realizes that's also not a direction he wants them to go, so he then proceeds to take them further up the stairs. Goodman reaches the top of the stairs, looks over his left shoulder, realizes the entrance to the Senate floor is unguarded, and then proceeds to provoke and push the rioter, leading them away, all the way towards backup. Goodman and his fellow officers are now the last line of defense for the Senate, but more problems are on their way because the crowd has also turned south towards the crypt. If they take this, they'll be able to have access to the entire building. Unfortunately, at this point, the police in the crypt are overrun and pushed back, and the crowd takes control of the crypt and therefore giving them access to the entire building. What I find more shocking at this point is that no guns have been drawn by any police officer. Trump finally tweets from his dining room, but it's not helpful to the situation. It's incendiary.
Mike Pence didn't have the courage to do what should have been done to protect our country and our Constitution, giving states a chance to certify a corrected set of facts, not the fraudulent or inaccurate ones, which they were asked to previously certify. USA demands the truth.
Look, I can think of no greater failure by a commander-in-chief than to allow this kind of disturbance to continue and not stop it.
At the same time, Mike Pence is being ushered out of the Senate along with nuclear launch equipment and codes. At 2:25, another breach is made on the opposite side of the Capitol building. This time, police have been battling for over half an hour with the crowd, but because they've had access to the crypt and they've gotten to the back of the police line that's been protecting that side of the building, the police line collapses, allowing more rioters into the building. Here we see the level of organisation with the Oath Keepers as well as other groups. This group of Oath Keepers are moving into the Capitol using a military tactic of entry. They're also using walkie-talkies, which you've been hearing throughout this video.
House is in recess. We're going to yank them out of their seats.
Here we see members of the Oath Keepers as well as members of the Proud Boy group. This is the second time for some of them entering into the building.
Look over the Capitol, overran the Capitol. We're in the Capitol.
Whilst the Senate is being evacuated, the House of Representatives is still in session. And with great irony, we have one of the people tweeting and inciting the crowd inside the room, which is about to be attacked, Paul Gossard. At 2:38, Donald Trump tweets,
"Please support our Capitol Police and law enforcement. They are truly on the side of our country. Stay peaceful."
It's 2:38 and we still don't know what Donald Trump is doing other than sitting in the dining room watching all of this unfold. The National Guard have still not been called in by the president. The chamber hasn't been evacuated and the mob are at the door. The rioters, realizing that they can't get in, decide to move and go down the left corridor.
Please be advised there are masks under your seats. Please grab a mask, place it in your lap, and be prepared to don your mask in the event that we get a breach.
Upon reaching another entry point, the crowd see members of Congress and they get angry.
Hey, he's got a gun! He's got a gun!
At 2:45, a QAnon supporter, Ashley Babbitt, is shot and killed. 3:13 p.m. and Donald Trump sends out another tweet asking for peace. I'm asking for everyone at the US Capitol to remain peaceful. No violence. Remember, we are the party of law and order. Respect the law and our great men and women in blue. Thank you. Armed police stop rioters reaching the balconies of the House of Representatives, which still has congresspeople waiting to be evacuated. Outside, there's still a decisive battle to be had by the inauguration door, a door that the president must walk through in order to become sworn in as President of the United States. Outside, rioters attempted to push in through that door. On the inside, we had riot police protecting that door at all costs. What took place was something akin to that of a rugby match, with two sides slamming up against each other. Rioters would use whatever they could to get through that barrier, even eye-gouging some of the police officers. After several hours of to and fro between the two sides, and damaging and severely injuring many police officers, the police regained control. One of the more disturbing images and slogans being chanted were the threats to hang Mike Pence. Even gallows had been erected outside in order to hang Mike Pence.
They've got the gallows set outside this Capitol building. It's time to using them.
Start making a list, put all those names down, and we start hunting them down one by one.
Traitors get guillotined!
At 4:05, President-elect Joe Biden goes on TV demanding Trump end the siege.
To go on national television now to fulfill his oath and defend the Constitution and demand an end to this siege.
At 4:17, Donald Trump releases this message. This is one of 3 attempted recordings, and this is considered the best by his staff.
I know your pain. I know you're hurt. We had an election that was stolen from us. It was a landslide election, and everyone knows it, especially the other side. But you have to go home now. We have to have peace. We have to have law and order. We have to respect our great people in law and order. We don't want anybody hurt. It's a very tough period of time. There's never been a time like this where such a thing happened, where they could take it away from all of us, from me, from you, from our country. This was a fraudulent election, but we can't play into the hands of these people. We have to have peace. So go home. We love you. You're very special. You've seen what happens. You see the way others are treated that are so bad and so evil. I know how you feel. But go home and go home in peace.
A clearly mixed message, both trying to calm down the rioters, but also adding fuel to the fire with conspiracy theories. It would still be until 5:40 that the police were in large enough numbers that they were able to clear out the rioters from the building and from the surrounding area. Donald Trump wasn't finished, and at 6:01 he sent out another incendiary tweet.
These are the things and events that happen when a sacred landslide election victory is so unceremoniously and viciously stripped away from great patriots who have been badly and unfairly treated for so long. Go home with love and in peace. Remember this day forever. I'm Donald Trump, and I don't endorse this video. It's fake news. It's all lies. It's a total fraud. You should not subscribe or like Political X. Every time you like and subscribe, he damages my campaign.
And unfortunately, it doesn't end there. It does look like Donald Trump is going to be running for president in 2024. Now, the reason I'm actually showing you this clip of Piers Morgan interviewing Trump is because it's reflective of what Trump thinks today, and he still believes it's a steal, which I think will ultimately hamper him for re-election. But the other question that comes from this video is, what was Donald Trump doing for 4 hours? Now, you're going to hear a response here, and I'm going to respond to it quite clearly, because there are other precedents available for this.
Nancy Pelosi is in charge of security. She didn't do her job.
She's half in charge of it. So the Republicans
The mayor of
and the
D.C.
Democrats have equal share of
The
that.
mayor of D.C. and Nancy Pelosi are in charge
Actually,
of
the
security.
Republicans and the Democrats have 50-50. But she was actually cowering for terror in fear of her life that day, because there was a huge mob of people who were attacking the centre of democracy in America.
Donald Trump is president of the United States. That means he's commander-in-chief of the United States, which means he can give direct orders to send in the military to quell a riot situation. We don't know what he was doing other than sat there watching this unfold in the dining room. We know this because of the January 6th committee that's been investigating as to what has taken place, and they've taken witness statements saying that he was approached at least 4 times, 2 of which was by Ivanka Trump, his daughter. He did nothing. He sat and he watched, because what he essentially did was wind up a hornet's nest and throw it into Congress, and waited to see where the pieces fell. The President of the United States, with the strongest military in the world, couldn't be bothered to pick up the phone for 4 hours to the military to order them in to clear the streets. We now know this because it's on record that Donald Trump is blaming Nancy Pelosi for his failings as Commander-in-Chief of the United States military, and therefore being unable to send them in. We know this is hogwash because presidents have done this in the past, like at Little Rock, Arkansas, where President Eisenhower authorized the 101, the Screaming Eagles, Airborne Division, into Arkansas to protect students trying to attend school. We saw this with President Hoover, who used the military to clear World War I veterans out of Washington. We even saw Donald Trump clear the streets of Washington just for a photo opportunity. Yet according to this interview, there was nothing Trump could do because it was up to Nancy Pelosi, who was carrying the basement, along with the other Republican senators and leaders who were also carrying the basement, because the president had sent in a hornet's nest. A special thanks to Track Record. Thank you to all my patrons and YouTube members, and to any of you who just like, comment and subscribe. It's free, and you know it helps fight Donald Trump.